I still remember learning this technique years ago and what a game changer it was for how much better it made my tight pectoral muscles feel. And so if you've got some tight pecs of your own and traditional stretching isn't getting the job done, then you're gonna wanna give this technique a try. So let's get to it. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Now today's video is sponsored by some fun memories of my days of competitive powerlifting. Fun sport to be in, but man, it can be pretty intense on a lot of the muscles, including the pecs. So today I thought it would be a good idea based on some of those memories that I had to show you guys how you can get and target the pectoral muscles a bit better if they're a little bit stiff, tight, or achy on you, and they need a little bit of TLC. All right, so what are we doing to start to kind of give some TLC to these pectoral muscles? Well, ultimately what we're gonna do in a simplistic sense is we are going to do some foam rolling for the pecs and the chest area, but without a traditional foam roller because the cylindrical shape of a foam roller doesn't really contour that well to the chest. But instead we're gonna use something like a ball of some type. We're gonna get into that because that's gonna fit in quite nicely to the pectoral region and should feel really good and kind of help do what we call a release or myofascial release for some of that tissue. All right, now why does this technique work so well? Now, if there's only one important takeaway of this video, this might be the one, so just listen here for a few seconds, then we'll get right into the techniques. So with the pectoral muscles, there's actually two of them. There's the pectoralis major and the pectoralis minor. Now, most people are familiar with pectoralis major. That is the big kind of beefy one on top of the chest right underneath the skin. It attaches from the sternum and the collarbone out to the arm bone. So when that muscle can contract, one of the things it can do is it can help to pull the arm inwards. And so that means when the arm comes outwards, we are stretching it because pectoralis major goes to the upper arm bone. So any arm movement outwards is going to stretch it. But here's the thing, pectoralis minor sits underneath that muscle, and that one does not attach to the upper arm bone. So pectoralis minor attaches from something that we call the coracoid process, which is a little projection from the scapula or the shoulder blade, and it attaches down onto your ribs, typically ribs 3, 4, and 5 on most people. And so that muscle, it is one of the pectoral muscles, but it doesn't actually cross the shoulder joint. So any type of arm movement, reaching your arm backwards or doing a traditional stretch isn't targeting that muscle. So we need a different way to target it instead. And that's where this technique comes in. But keep in mind that this technique will also be good for pectoralis major because we're providing compression and some other kind of tissue shearing to the area based on the type of ball that you're gonna use, so it's effective for both muscles. So a lot of times people do the traditional doorway stretch where they're pulling their arm backwards and then again, they're kind of leaning into the door frame or the corner of the wall, wherever you're doing it, with your arm up and outwards. And that's a nice stretch for that pectoralis major, but again, it's not getting pectoralis minor. But we're about to change all that with this technique. All right, so for doing this technique, you're gonna need a ball of some type, and it needs to be bigger than a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball or a ball of that size, because that's not gonna be big enough to get into the pectoral region with the techniques that I'm about to show you. So instead, you want a medium-sized ball of some type, and typically there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can get an actually officially designed ball for a lot of this myofascial work, something like this one here. It's actually designed for it. It's a softer one, but it works quite good. Or if you don't want to spend the money, you can go to the toy department in a store of some type, and you can pick up a little sports ball of some type. This is a soccer ball here in this type. That works well too. You can even use medicine balls. So there's kind of medium-sized medicine balls. Anything of a different firmness, it's whatever's best for you. The softer the ball is gonna be, the more gentle it'll be on the kind of tissue manipulation through the area. The more firm the ball is gonna be, the more aggressive it'll be. And that's not a bad thing, you just don't want it to be painful. So again, some type of kind of aching or soreness is fine, just don't have it be painful. Now there are two different ways that you can do this rolling technique through your pectoral muscles. The first one I'm gonna show you is my preferred way because I just feel there's a little bit more fine tuning in terms of how we can stretch and manipulate the tissue, but there's a second way that might be a bit more convenient if you wanna do that way. So the first way is to take an exercise bench. If you're in a fitness center, again, just use one of the fitness benches, or if you're at home, you can even try using like a little stool or a chair of some type. And what you're gonna do is just drape yourself over that little bench and then make sure that the ball is right on the pectoral tie-in area. So not on the arm bone, but more just kind of the outer portion of the pectoral muscles for starting. And then you're just gonna sink into it and then roll around gently. Now, if you're finding that it's tender enough just sinking into it, just sink there and hold that position. You don't even have to move around. But if you find that you want to kind of stir yourself around a little bit, you might feel that ball rolling over some tighter areas of tissue, and then that can be some type of tissue manipulation that might be of benefit. If you want to kick it up a notch even more, you can also take your arm and kind of pull your arm in different positions while the ball is pressing in or sinking into your pectoral muscles, because that will provide a little bit more of an intense stretch. And this kind of repeated movement is more what we call a dynamic stretch, where we're actually moving the muscle to stretch it out rather than holding it in one position, and that tends to work quite well for a technique like this. Now, technique number 2 is to basically do the same type of movement, but either in a door frame or on the corner of a wall, whatever you have access to. And then again, you're just gonna place the ball in the pectoral region and then just kind of sink into either the door frame or the corner that you're performing this on. And then from there, again, you can either stir yourself around a little bit or you can just sink into it and hold it. Now, with this technique, again, it's more convenient typically. However, it's a little bit more limiting because you can't quite move your arm as much, but you can, again, once you've sunken into the ball, kind of sweep your arm up and down as if you're kind of doing like a little snow angel type of movement and see if you can get a little bit more of a tissue stretch that way. But the key is to play around with all of this and see what works best for you. Again, everyone's gonna do it a bit different, and as long as you find something that feels good for you, then you're all set. All right, and there are a couple of things that you will want to avoid while doing this technique, just to make sure that you're avoiding any unnecessary discomfort. So the first thing that you want to avoid is you want to avoid rolling on that coracoid process. So again, the coracoid process is that kind of bony projection of the shoulder blade kind of right up at the kind of upper front of the shoulder there. Rolling on that is not going to give you any benefit at all, and it's going to be pretty painful, so just avoid directly rolling on that area. All right, and the second thing that you're going to want to avoid when you do this technique is making sure that you're not getting any pins and needles or numbness or tingling into your fingers, your hand, or your arm. Now, the reason why this can happen is there's a highway of nerves that comes out of the neck through the front of the shoulder down into the arms. It's called the brachial plexus. And sometimes if we're just positioned in a certain way, we can put pressure on those nerves and we get that kind of tingling sensation. Now, if this happens, just kind of back off with the pressure, try and adjust the ball to a different spot, and then try again. And if you are finding that you're continually getting that kind of pins and needles into your fingers, no matter what type of position or how much pressure you're trying, you might just want to try a different technique altogether. So you'll want to remember that as you do this, it shouldn't be painful, just maybe mildly uncomfortable, because we are kind of manipulating and kind of putting pressure on some of these kind of tight restricted tissues, but this shouldn't be painful. And the more frequently you do it for a longer period of time, the more soft and supple that tissue tends to become, the healthier it is, and then the more movement and mobility you have as a result. And so with that being said, everyone, keep looking after yourselves, keep looking after one another, keep making great things happen, and I will see you in the next video.